Okay, good. So your first task in the study will be to convert an implementation of the priority queue data structure from Java to Python, and you'll do this one without the AI support. And then your second task in the study will be to convert an implementation of the try data structure from Java to Python, and you'll do that one with the AI support. And we'll also take a break between the two tasks since the session they've usually been taking the full 2 hours. So first, let me tell you a bit more about the code translation task. The task is to produce a complete and working Python translation within 30 minutes. And by complete, I mean that all of the functionality and documentation from the Java code should be translated. And by working, I mean that the Python code should, run and be tested for correctness. But as I mentioned earlier, there's more work to do to accomplish an absolutely perfect translation than what you'll be able to do within the 30 minutes. So really what I'm asking you to do is do as much as you can in the time that you have.
Hmm.
But there may be trade-offs in how you spend your time, such as whether you choose to translate all of the functionality first, or to translate a portion of it first while testing it to make sure it works. How you navigate this trade-off is completely up to you. Couple other things about the task. You'll be using an online version of the VS Code editor in this study. It has a few minor differences from the desktop application, but in general, all of the menu commands and keystrokes are available and everything should just work. But if you do have questions about something or encounter any difficulties, please let me know. Also, I will not be able to answer any technical questions about the code or what it's supposed to do, but I can tell you that the Java implementation is correct. When you make the translation, please try to preserve the naming of classes and methods if possible, but we're less concerned with how you name variables. You can use whatever resources you would feel helpful. So if you need to search the web, you need to search Stack Overflow. If you want to run any of the code, that's all fair game. We have installed Java and Python in the editor, so you can run all of the code. And then I'll give you kind of a 5-minute heads up when time is almost up, so you know to start wrapping things up.
Hmm.
And then finally, we also ask that as you work on the tasks, we'd like you to sort of think out loud and tell us about what you're thinking and what you're doing, which really helps us understand like what's going on in your head versus just, if you're sitting there silently, I might ask you a question about what you're thinking about or what you're working on to get you talking.
Yep.
So any other questions before we get started?
Are you going to be sending me a link in Slack?
Yes, I will be. I will send you a link on WebEx in just a second.
Yeah.
So, all right. So for the first task, as I mentioned, you're going to translate the priority queue from Java to Python, and you'll do this one without the AI support. And so here's the link to the editor. If you open this up, I believe in Firefox, it might give you a little warning about the certificate that we've
It
used.
does.
Okay, so that's
Advanced
that's
and accept
yeah,
risk.
okay. Yeah, that's a safe thing. And then also if you could share your screen.
Yep. I'll be starting that right about now. I just had to set it up so it was in a separate window. So first, with priority queue, my first thought will
Yeah.
be
So
to
just before you get started, let me just also mention, so priorityqueue.java, that's the original Java source, and then
Mhm.
your solution will go into priorityqueue.py.
Yes.
So with that, I will start the timer.
Okay. The first thing I'll be doing is opening both files. That's the first thing that I generally think about. Command slash to start with a comment. Unsure if this is retained after I finish. If it is, I like my name to be on the file so it's more identifiable. Start by reading.
You know what, if I could ask you not to put your name in the file,
Understandable.
if you would like, you can put your participant
Right.
number as P28, and that helps us maintain that anonymity.
There we go.
Okay.
Starting, I like to read this. So implement priority queue using an array list-based implementation of a binary heap. Rammed for any element class that supports comparable interface on itself. PriQ allows one to store comp elements, remove them, order defined by comp. Highest priority first. Good to note. Insertion and removal are O log n ops in terms of number of items in the queue. So first thought is, running through this. I'm going to downsize some other windows that I have on my desktop that you don't see because they're on my laptop screen, but this clutter is going to draw my attention, trying to avoid that. Extends comp t, arraylist t, heap, constructor first. Python will not be needing an explicit constructor, that's fine. So I'm going to start, first thing, I should actually just do this so I can look at them side by side. I boilerplate most of the stuff that I will work on. So for insert, it is just, no, it is defunction. Insert, and the param will be item. I believe pass should suffice for that. Insert an item into priority queue. So I can actually just take this as my stub and comment for now. I'll come back to this later and clean that up. Keep going down the code. Blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. Also, def remove. Again, item. No, not needed. Pass. And again, I'll be stealing the documentation. If I'm correct, nope. Yeah, it'll be fine. I've been writing a little bit too much translation between, not translation, but a little bit too much JavaScript. I believe it's triple tick. I haven't written a multi-line comment. There we go, in Python in a little bit. So that just took a second for me to get back under my fingers. Come back to here and there. I know I'm focusing a little bit too much on my documentation for a time size. So what I'll do first is def size, turn number of elements. That's fair enough. Nope, probably not triple. It's triple front tick. There we go. No, not that. VS Code editor. Again, pass. Escape to get rid of that. Is empty. Nothing taken in. I know I'm probably burning a little bit of my candle doing this, but it'll help me in the long run because I don't have to keep flipping back and forth trying to find, where is this, things like that. Finally, constructor here. I have an object set up with saved heap results while not empty, add items, add or remove. Oh, move things from the saved heap to the heap. Okay. Return results. Okay. Oh, enumerate, not the constructor. It returns a public list. That's why. Here, that's why we read documentation. Again, backticks, my enemy. Oh, not double paste. There we go. I have the enumerate. I have add all, which I'm going to learn from my mistake and just do this. Add all takes in a collection. Finally, heapify. This looks to be the end of it. So I'll do final heapify lowercase. Params that it ingests are index and size. Nope, backticks again. Okay, that seems clean enough that I'm able to work with. I'm going to do another pass back. Unsure why Oh, because it's too far forward. That would do it. Spacing in Python is important. Add my pass to the end here. So moving up back to the top. I don't believe I necessarily need the constructor for it. No, I don't. I can make it as a I could just make it as a global for the class here, which would actually be fine. Comparable array list on Python. Array list is an array. No, array list is a list of expandable size, as my Java is returning to me. Python does have default expandable sizes, so I don't need to necessarily port for that as far as I'm aware. Array. So what I would do is I could say heap here equals just that. I don't need a line ending with Python. I know it won't yell at me, but it makes sense if I don't have it because then this code could get mistaken for something else if there is line endings. Start with insert. Remove my pass. Insert an item into the priority queue. So I can actually come back here and fix this because I didn't have that at front. I'm inserting an item. So what I first have to do is reading from here, I get the index to insert at. So I just say index equals heap.size, which would be len heap is how I would, come on, how I would write that. 0 index len2, I'm inserting at position 2. Yes, that should work. So I would say heap.add item. Instead of heap.add, it would be, oh, I fat fingered shift enter and it opened that, so I can get rid of that. Add would be one. I would rather do insert, give an index and object. Right there, index would be item. No, index would be index, object would be item. Save. Next, I have a while loop for insert. Parent index equals index -1 div2. Heap set, index break. While index less 0. So I can actually just go down. There's another block there. I can say while greater 0. Sorry, not less 0. Throw a pass here while I'm thinking about this. I'm redefining a new variable for parent index. So I can actually just come back to here. Parent index equals index -1 div2. Man, I'm going to keep wanting to throw semicolons on these because I'm staring at JavaScript at the same time. T parent, T is type from array list. I believe that's what that is. Comparable T. Comparable. There we go. I don't need explicit typing, so I can leave that alone. So I need a new parent variable equals e hat. Yes, that is how we spell heap. So I'm not doing a get because I don't quite need a get. This is saying return that item from there. I don't need the index. I don't need to remove it from there, I'm pretty sure. I think all I'm doing is getting the item at that index, so I just need parent index here. Next, I have more things to do. I have this while loop, which encompasses the whole thing, that's fine. Parent is that. So I can move to my if block, parent.compare to item less 0. If, so Java comparable compare to, does it return -1 if it is less? So I would say Java compare to see if I can get the documentation, Oracle documentation. Types, it would F for compare to. Natural comparison, not quite what I'm looking for. E1 dot compare to E2 double equals 0. Not quite what I'm looking for. Still not what I'm looking for. The relation that defines natural ordering. So where is X and Y defined in this for this example? I am not seeing that right now. Quotient, not quite what I'm looking for. There we go. Compares this object with a specified order. Fair, fair. This object that it is being called on is less than, equal to, or greater than specified object. So for this, if parent is less than the item, so inherently comparable is an assumption that I'm going to make for the type that I'm working on. I believe that is true for Python. I don't quite know that off the top of my head. I'll make a comment to return to that because I don't quite want to look at that right now while I'm coding. I'll look at it after I finish it. Check Python inherent comparison. Oh, wait, is it control? No. I'm so used to, on my keyboard, Option backspace is delete entire word, so that's why I was getting that struggle there. Comparison of values. Types. So if parent less item, I believe that's all I need. So I insert here, pass, else. I need a colon here. I fat fingered. Shift return again. I can say break. That'll be fine. I end this loop. I end here. I'm going to say return 0 because that's the habit that I have. For my functions, I return 0 given that. The break could potentially, no, the break is not an expected failure. That's a valid break. For pass, I can come back to here and I say, if parent is less than the item, parent index, sorry, the item should be set at parent index. So it would be heap dot insert. It's not insert. This is the reordering because as I insert things, you have to reorder your queue. Oh, right. No, it's just a queue. It's just a queue. So what I want to do is heap.set index parent. Parent index item. Oh, I'm swapping them. Okay, okay. So what I want to say is this index blah equals item and heap at index equals parent. Yes. And then finally, I update my index like so. I believe the insert is now complete. Add attributing for P28. Moving to remove. If heap.size, so if len heap double equals 0, I just want to return null, which in Python is none. Should, I believe. I'm down to here. Element. I'll keep that name. Seems valid to me. There's my return at the very end. Index. So index len heap again. So get me the full size. But we're going to say -1 because we want to swap the last item in for the first. Remove. Ah, okay. I say swap. Okay, okay, okay. So element is the one that I'm putting in. So it should be heap 0. I'm going to say heap.set 0 heap.get index. Fair enough. Heap 0 equals heap jeep. Yes, heap index. So I'm taking the item at the last space and I'm setting it to the front. Heap.remove index. I'm taking the item last into first. Huh. Okay, let me expand this so I can read this a little bit. Propagate that last item in order proper place. Getting ahead of myself. I'm just doing line by line. It'd be basically delete heap index. So I no longer necessarily need that item at index because I moved it to the very front, which kind of makes sense to me. Fair enough. Heapify. Blop. Heapify. There we go. It's at the very bottom. Heapify. 0 and heap.size. 0. Hey, look at me being smart and actually writing this in. It's an indicated point based on it is processed recursively. I swap them, I remove it, I say sure thing, and then I need to restructure it because it has to be reordered because I just changed everything's ordering. So, restore a section to maintain heap properties. I've not worked with actual heaps in a while. I know I've actually worked with them when I was in school, but still. Because I just made a call to heapify, I'm going to take this chance to move down to heapify and actually get started coding on it because that makes the most sense to me right now. Heapify, present. So restore section of the heap to maintain heap's properties. Index is the point in the heap to work on. So I'm just going to say do a full pass on it. If the indicated point does not have proper relation to its descendants, their values are swapped and the descendant is then processed recursively. If the ordering is incorrect, that's what I have to do. I need to do everything in that order. So if size grade 0 is size coded, it is not. Size greater 0, meaning, do we have items? Pretty sure that's what that would mean. So I can come to here, pass. I'm going to come up to here to size because I just made a call to it. And from what I'm getting earlier, I believe, yep, return len heap. I think that's all I need to do. Pretty sure I'm going to heap dot. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there was no dot size attribute that I was making more for myself. So if size greater 0, I want to say left index equals index star 2 for multiplied 2 plus 1. And I copy that because the only changes are right index and plus 2. T is comparable, so it's just parent index. Parent equals heap index. Pardon me. Max index is index. I only want to move up to that. Huh. I'll come back to that later for that thought. If I'm feeding it 0 up here, interested to see how this is actually going to compare. So max index equals index. Straightforward, fair enough. I'm ingesting the parameter index. So if left, come on, brain, type, left index less size and, but in Python it's and it's lowercase. Heap.get, so heap at index left index dot compare to parent greater 0 if heap at left index is greater than the parent. Greater parent. Symbol up to right. Comes down here, it redlines me max index equals left index. Looking at the next line, right index, left index. Okay, so I can actually just kind of copy this. Come on, paste. Oh, poo, you didn't let me copy. There we go. If right index less size and heap get at right is less than heap left. Yep, that's how I would read that. Max index equals right index. Now, why are you yelling at me here? Oh, because I didn't actually properly check that. Save. Not sure how saving works in this, but I'm going to save manually as I feel that's important to do. Finally, I get to my last conditional here. So if max index is not index, I believe that's the correct version there. If I also write not equal, I'm sure it's not redlining me. I like that better. Maintains, code styling between the two. Also a little bit more readable if you're coming from Java over to Python. Swap them and recur. Oh, that's not the comment I needed. Swap them and recurse on subtree rooted at min index. Fair enough. So I want to say heap at index equals heap get max. So heap at max index, fair enough. Then I set at max index to parent, and then I call heapify again. Go all the way down, of course. Heap max index equals parent. Then I heapify max index call size. I'll take the second to breathe and grab some water. And am I allowed to ask how much time I have remaining?
Yeah, you've got about 6 minutes.
Well, darn. Looking at the work that I have done, I have so far, I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to keep talking through. 1, 2, 3 out of the 6 methods. Fair enough. Is empty is just saying if 0, Boolean. I'll say this one should be simple enough because I'm just returning. Oh, you are not excited at me typing that way. Len of heap, if it is 0, that's what I would call doesn't equal 0. That's what I would call empty if there's no elements in it. For enumerate here, I have saved heap equals new array list, so probably just that. Results equals new array list that, but this is based on heap. If I wanted to I don't see this is one of the things I don't necessarily like about Python. Looking at this, I know I have 6 minutes left, can keep talking. I have the vague feeling if I just say that, I have to look at Python again for its memory assignments. Because if I'm looking at this makes me wary because in certain courses past that I've done, if I say this, saved heap equals heap, any changes to heap propagate because data assignment. I'm not sure if Python does that. Make a note to return to this later. Check on Python assignment. You have a question?
No, it's just 4.5 minutes now.
Yep.
Let you know.
To memory space. That's probably not the way to properly say that, but I'll keep going. This one is just results of blah. While not, that works. Heap, no, I don't need that. It's just is empty. That'll work. I need to say results dot add of remove. That's not proper structure. I'm going to write this method and then look back at my last couple of questions. Heap equals saved heap. Turn results. So this is provide all results in a priority queue in order, returns a list in order. Okay. So Python assign a list to another list. This is something extend function. This takes elements to the end of the new list. Simplest method of calling list by using the built-in function list. I was actually thinking that, but I didn't want to do it unless I actually said it. Built-in empty list. There we go. That's one thing I wanted to make sure. Java is more explicit about that, but there we go. Close. I had another comment up here about comparison. So Python comparison of variables. Uh, Inherent comparison of variable types. I should probably, oh, this is not what I'm looking for. I think what I would like to do is come into here. Heap is not defined. So what I'd like to do is make a new instance for bash. I can go to Python, close Python 3. Here we go. So import prior. I'm making the point here to full stop because I believe I've hit the extent of my time. I'm going to spend the rest of my time trying to run some basic tests, things like that.
Okay, it's about 2 minutes.
QUE. There. So what I would first like to do is just say heap not defined. Well, maybe I'm missing a global statement. I'll define it here and I'll return to that later. Heap is splat. So if I say insert of this, insert is not defined. So what I didn't do was actually import correctly. I just said import the file. So if I say .heap, that's what I was looking for. So what I want is more, actually, I'm not doing that. Controls, nope, exit. New Python 3 instance from priority queue, import star. Not fantastic, but it gets the job done for what I'm looking for. Heap is now known. Insert is the function. Bam. So I'm going to say insert 4. I return 0, which is what I was looking for. The heap now is an item. Remove. Renmove. Remove. The item is present, so if I check heap again, it is now empty. Insert, I'm going to go up to insert 4 and insert list indices must be integers or slices, not float. I attempted to insert a 4 item. Len heap index item. Parent heap parent index. I need to cast this to an int. So is Java
All right, that's
yeah,
time. So maybe just leave it right there.
hands off.
Hands off.
The remaining thought that I did have was about if Java division on integers is floored or ceilinged. I believe it's floored. That was my next point.
Yeah. Okay. So I know it's tempting to fix, but also I wanted to answer your question from earlier about saving. If you hit the keystroke, I think it like there's a command in here to save, but also it's just like every time you type a keystroke, it gets saved.
I
So if you
figured.
just close the window right now, it's actually all saved for us
Yep.
on the server. So, all right, so let's do the first survey here. You can go to this link.
P28.
You are P28.
Current condition, no AI,
So
on
there's no
priority.
so prior to, yep. Yeah, and you have to tick that box.
Um, wasn't able to test all the methods that I was. Oh, important for me to read this because I almost scored myself closer to failure.
Oh yeah, I should remind you if you could also speak aloud as to why you're rating things a
Oh,
certain
yes.
way. It's understandable.
Mentally demanding was the task. I would not actually rate this as mentally demanding as it was not quite a data structure I was necessarily unfamiliar with, just a couple of things that were in my mind working. Um, Working with heaps and things like that, I haven't for a little while, so I had to think back. For hurried or rushed, none. I worked until I hit the time limit. That was my justification for saying no rush. I didn't feel any pressure to complete it because I knew I was not getting scored on something like that. I was just working forward. Successful, I put myself at an 8, slightly above 50%, because I feel that was the point that I made it to. How hard did you have to work to accomplish the level of performance? I'll rate that at a 6. Again, not very difficult. Uh, I didn't have to sit and ponder, some justifications. This was a data structure that I was looking to make. How insecure, discouraged, and annoyed? Not very, because I understand the parameters of the assignment. Approach for how I worked on this task and how I allocated my time. I worked in ways to first pave out the path for me to work on and import some of the documentation, then moved over to a path that allowed me to begin working on functionality right away. Testing came at the end when, pardon me, time started to run out. To what extent do you feel you understand how the implementation of data structure works? I would say somewhat. Why? Reading the code, but not executing it gave me an idea of what it was meant to do and how it should function. I would have liked to test the Java a little more to gain a better understanding if given time. Other feedback about experience. It is a nice tool.
Great. All right, so that's the end of the first task. You can also close this window because we won't need this one anymore. Yeah, that's fine. So, all right. So at this point, I promised a break. So why don't we take a couple minutes and then we'll start the second task.
Alrighty.
And I will also be back.
Alrighty.
Great. Welcome back. Okay, so in this next task, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to translate the try data structure from Java to Python. And this one you get the help of the AI code translation system. So what this system is able to do is it automatically translates code from Java to Python, but it's not a perfect system, so the translated code may contain errors in it. We use this system ahead of time to create 5 separate Python translations for you, which you'll see when you open the editor. And how you use these translations to help you complete the task is entirely up to you. So let me paste the link for this one. And then if you could also share your screen again. Okay, so here on the left you see try.java. That's the Java implementation. Try.py, please put your solution in that file. And then the try AI 1 through 5, those are 5 of the translations produced by the AI system.
Okay.
So with that, I will start time now.
Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is default to open the 5 and take a look at the first. AI5 looks to be full capitalization just from the class. Thing about what I hadn't done before was I didn't actually instantiate a class in my previous module. I haven't worked on that in a while. Good to know. Probably smarter for me to do that. Import OS makes me think I'm doing something with my OS, maybe putting a file, something like that. Differences between these two look to be naming conventions. This one looks to be, again, full capitalized, camel case there. No import on OS there. Okay. Try.java. I'm going to start reading the documentation here. Try object for the storing retrieval of strings. A tree of nodes. Each node represents a char in a string that has been stored in the try. Stored strings represented by a path in the try from the root to a node marked as an end of word node. Interesting. Pardon me. Stored individual places in the tree. Each node represents a point in a stored string, and as a set of child nodes represent characters in string indexed by the character that leads to that node. Is word flag set to true means end of some string stored in the try may continue if there are children. Makes sense. 28 again. Try and try node. Try node try. So looking at these, I'll begin. I particularly am fond of, let's say, try one, try two. Looking at it in itself, fair children, end of word, not seeing many differences between the files. I'm going to keep tabbing through. I know I don't like 3 because I don't particularly like many underspaces, underscores between my words for variables, so I'm going to actually remove 3 there. Quick peek down here. Enumerate, return. Return init.py.
Could you say a little more of what the was about?
Particularly just because I'm looking at this and I'm not exactly sure where init.py actually comes in this, so I need to read more about how this is actually functioning. My was both for how it's being stored potentially, or if it's being just stored in init.py. Insert a string into a try. Set default, set end of word. Potentially it's in the node. Enumerate the strings for root dirs os walk. I guess I'm just sort of not seeing the main reason why this is here unless you are looking for persistence after the instance comes down, something like that, which I should look at this and double check because this is arrays list hash map list. Private trinode. Yep. It's a root. They begin as a root. Yep, makes sense. I'm inserting a string. Compute if absent trinode. Well, I can tell you, if I didn't have the AI, I would have no idea what the heck that meant, so I would have to look that up. Good thing that that is there. So for test, for find word, begin at root, iterate word.length, I plus, iterate over the nodes in the children of the parent until you find it. If it is not found, return false. The node is not in the try. Sorry, the word is not in the try. That makes sense to me. Delete root word 0. String word. There's an overloaded constructor here that I delete. Node string word. Oh, it's right beneath it. Ingest here. Makes sense to sort of abstract that for the user perspective, make it easier to code. If index equal word.length and the current is not end of word, false, it is not found, I'm not deleting it. Or potentially there's a return false at the end, something. Why is this return here if, oh, because that's just a conditional. If current is the end of the word, current set end of word is false, return current children is empty. Fair enough. Fair enough. Return true if the string was deleted, false if it was not found. Now that makes sense to me. The only thing, current children is empty. Your node has nothing. That would be true. So if your node has no children, the string was deleted. That does make sense. Okay. I'm going to begin my implementation here. I actually start with the try node before the try. I do see class implements try for retrieval. Looks like that's just it. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Because this is present, I see no reason not to begin using the AI-generated code. That's the reason why it is here. It's meant to make my life easier for this development. I'm going to copy this and come over to mine. I'm okay changing this because I'm looking for that try underscore node. If it was me, my variables are camel case. I guess it makes more sense to have my classes not. I actually do see that. However, this needs to be updated. Try node. I'm fine lowercasing this. No, classes should be uppercased. I'm remembering that now. I have no idea why I forgot that, but classes should be uppercased. Capitalized, rather. And is word flag set to true? Sure. Self-children is dictionary. Is it a word? No. Makes sense. Get children, return self.children. Yep. Is end of word. I'm fair with that. Set end of word. Correct. Okay. I believe I took this from 4, so I'm going to actually move 4 to the front here because, well, I like 4. I'm going to keep using it. Constructor self-root is try node. That makes sense. Insert a string to try. For character and word, set default. For each child, for L in word, add a node to the first current's children. I actually do agree with that. I'm going to begin translating this over to here. I'll just update that because I believe that is actually important. This will need to be updated to try node as I renamed the class above. Insert for character in word, which is L. Current is current.getChildren.setDefault L splat. Hover. Built-in immutable sequence. Fair enough. Set default. I've not used this before, but this actually does make sense to me. I'm saying, you know, I begin at the root, I get the children of the root, and I say I want to start adding nodes to it. Does make sense to me. Um, Beginning here, the change from the AI versus non-AI is that I'm beginning to default to the AI file as opposed to the actual Java file, partially because it's starting to make more sense to me, partially because I'm using Python to Python for this new implementation. With this, as the work is sort of already done, this does start to begin to look like I should be using it to me. If I'm coming back to this, compute if absent else for a trinode constructor, Boolean is word. Children, potentially? I'll have to look at it more. I'm copying up to there so I can begin with these two now. Take this, come back to here, indent in. So what I want to do is take this in. Current is self.root. Begin at root for character and word. Ellen word, I like character more. I'm going to leave that though. No, I'm not. I'm going to update that because I like consistency. For character and word, node is current get children get character. Makes sense to me. It's a dictionary I do need a get. And double check here. I don't know if there's actually a get method. Do not believe there is. Does not look like it. If node is none, return false. There's no string found. Current is node. Loop, loop, loop until I get to it. At the very end, is this actually a word? It should be, but if I have cat and catastrophe is in my try, if I search for cat, I will not find cat because T is not end of word as it is defined. That makes sense. Delete, remove a string stored in a try. OS path, return os.path.join. That doesn't actually make sense to me. So it's like it's stored on the path. I'm not actually seeing the reason why this would need OS. I don't particularly find that, again, unless it is for persistence across multiple tries. Potentially, that's a little strange to me. Delete root word 0. Which one of you didn't actually import OS? How did you handle this? Just delete. What other instances of OS are here? So far, just this. I don't see the reason as to why this has to be present in the OS. This is my first instance of actually seeing this in this program. I like this implementation better because, actually, there it is. Return OS path.join. Oh, come on. You're actually not going to let me highlight it so I can see the explanation in window. That's fair. Did I copy the whole thing? I did. Self-word, remove a string stored in the try. I like this implementation better. I feel that is more usable to me. I do just like this better. I'm getting many notifications. I'll read this in a second. One is present here. I will read that in a second. And I'm in a meeting until 4. We'll talk to you after. Downsides go away. What other reasons are OS used in this? For root dirs files in os.walk. If not OS path exists, this enumerate makes no sense to me as to why I actually need OS here. which could just be for that run of the AI. Maybe they just liked using the OS path, potentially. I actually have this here. What was it here? Delete self current. There's not even a call here for the recursive on delete. I don't like that. I like this one much better. Versus delete function. Current is current node. Word is the string that I will be deleting, and index is the current depth that we have descended. If index equals len word, I'm not there. So if I'm at the end of my word, set end of word false. It is still stored in the try. I'm not removing any elements from the word try. All I'm doing is setting that flag for if it's in there or not. Nice implementation, because all I have to do is do that. Return current.getChildren. What is the actual return of this, though? I don't see why current get children is returned here. There's no return in the delete. Where is delete? Just return false. Well, I mean, there's no return here. That's fine. False is just 0. Return false is return 0. No, that should depend on your implementation. Maybe not. I'm getting bogged down and looking at something I don't actually have to. Come back to here. I have the first delete. I like this delete better than the other one because I don't see the point in actually. Hello? My insert key is no longer entering lines. Strange. Maybe, unsure if that's intended or not. Making a note here that my insert key does not actually. Oh, it does not because I'm still in find. That would do it. That would be the reason why. Problem between chair and computer. Huh. I did actually, so I'm going to downsize the speaker window because it was showing Justin up here for me and I couldn't actually see. So interesting feature, I guess. If you do a find on a string, it seems you can note, okay. I guess you have to explicitly hit the X and not just escape it. You are unable to insert any new lines while that is going on. Okay. I was down at here. Potential route for that might be that escape minimizes it, but does not remove the user from the sequence. That's interesting. Good to know, I guess. Try one. I like this one better now. I'm getting bogged down. Delete. So character is word at index 0. Yeah, fair. Start at 0. Node is current get children get character. So return the node from the children of the try node that is the character. If there is not there, that's why we're using get method because get will return false if not found. I want to return false and say I'm not deleting the word. This here is actually important. How did we set it in this one? I believe there was one that says the return. It is not. Oh, triple double quotes. Okay, fair enough. Here is just at return. At return. True if removed, false if not. Yes. True if deleted, false if not found. Yes. I think that's important because otherwise I wouldn't actually understand why I was returning false here. I would just return false, which is not really needed. Interesting to see that this none of the AI generated 1, 2, I'll check 3 just to be sure. I see the parameters ingested here and shown in the documentation, but not the return or the returned value rather. I don't really need the return type. I don't, but I see the need to show the returned value to explain this function. Should delete current node equals self dot delete node index word one, and node is not end of word. There's my recursive call. What is that? How would I even begin to explain that? Self dot delete node word index plus one and not end of word. The node should be deleted if it is not the end of word. That doesn't quite make sense. I think. Should, if it is true, meaning, oh no, it's just a double. Okay, okay. So if both conditions are true, it's a method to squish that code to a better condition. Current get children dot pop character. Okay, so we're actually removing it, meaning it should be removed. Get children should be removed means I am actually removing it from the try. Get children would be, oh, we are actually removing the items here. So let's say if I actually come up to here, how do I actually do this? Where's the delete here? Here it is. Current.get children double equals splat, or empty list. I don't understand why OS is even in here then. I mean, it's not really used here. That's not the correct point that I would look at. This one is this. Effectively, is empty list false? Empty list is false, which makes sense. If it double equals empty list, no. Empty list is true. If I do control splat Python 3, that I need capital T. Empty list is false. Oh, not single equals. You know what? I don't know what I was expecting, but I was curious to see anyway. This one's interesting though, about why current get children double equals empty. I'm not sure why. Get children, double checking that because I started copying and pasting across different files, and valid check to say I might have copied and pasted a method that was incorrectly named. So for this, current get children delete. It's nice that so far all these are single words. I haven't had to worry about it, but I should remember that. I'm looking at different AI generations of this. If I continue to copy and paste, as I will, because I do actually, I find that to be a better use of my time than hand typing this right now. The code is generated. I'm checking it to see if it meets what I expect it to be. Next is the enumerate function. Enumerate the strings stored in the try. So I just want the entries here. Again, no return here, but enumerate is an overloaded constructor here, so I'm just going to grab both of them actually. Come to here, back, and here. So what is the actual return here? There is not. I'm seeing. Return entries. Entries dot append. Oh, it doesn't have to actually return because it's not protected. No, there's a word for this in Java that I don't actually know. Entries. Where is it in here? Enumerate. List string entries. So this was actually merged together here, I think. No, it was not. ArrayList string. If it's class specific, this call. No, it's fine. It's fine. This makes sense to me. I just want to see the at return param here. This makes sense that you don't need to actually return entries in this call because you're not going to actually return as you recur through it. that would be sort of reductive and probably not work the way that I want it to. The return is not no return, but as progress, the entries. Um, this also doesn't have an explanation on the parameters. Did any of them have that? Interesting how delete did up here, but enumerate did not. Did it in the original? It did. No. And no. Interesting. I would have liked to see it, but it's not super important. Oh, go away. Big pop-up there. List becomes filled. I think that's valid. Beginning enumeration. Enumerate the strings. I'm returning each string stored in the trie in a list. Current is node. Node is 0. Current is 0. That doesn't quite make sense to me. Why 0?
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Ah! That node of 0 enumerates self. OS.walk. I still don't understand the root of that as to why OS is pulled in, and potentially after I'm finished with this example for try, I may continue to ask that question if there's an explanation that I'm allowed to have. However, I'm going to keep going. Entry is root. Okay, sure. Entry.rstrip. Right strip, I'm saying, what is the explanation of this? No, that's not what I'm looking for. Taking a pause to collect my thoughts. Current is node. You know what? That's fine. Current is 0. If 0 is end of word, current.get children. See, that's the part that I'm looking at, and you can say, this is not perfect. That is something I will actually do. Node is not just a 0, though. I'm trying to get, where is current defined? Self.root. But current is not actually defined on the constructor. It doesn't have to be. That's true. It doesn't have to be. I'm actually here saying it's not node, but how do I actually go through and I say children, children, children go down? I'm getting stuck on it. I just keep moving past it. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. I'd rather understand what's going on. The thing that I'm looking at is I'm essentially just saying I'm saying the number 0 is an end of a word. I'm not sure if that would actually work. For keys, I want to say entry.append the key, keep going down, entry.pop. It is a depth first. It is depth first. Okay. Pardon me. So I'm looking at this, and this enumerate function is what's starting to throw me off because it's not quite looking as expected. Noticing that I'm running out of time, another example I'm going to use, looking at these between the two, I believe four is not the one that I like because it uses OS, and I don't quite understand why. Moving on. Merge self other try. Merging tries together. Other try.enumerate. Okay, you know what? That makes sense to me. This is something that I can just go ahead and bring through. I'm going to save, open the editor here, and I said I'd like to open the editor. Not doing it though. No, not command palette. I wanted to at least open the terminal. That does the job. Oh, because I didn't actually close it correctly. That's why. So exit that, new instance, back to Python, exit, Python 3. That works. high cache because I'm beginning to actually work on it. Try underscore node, not defined. So if it's try underscore node, that works. So what I actually want to do is exit this. I have the same problem that I had in the first example. Python 3 from try import star. Running a couple tests on this. I want to say try equals try. I believe that should work. Yes. It's a try object at that memory address. So try dot insert 4 again. 4 is not an operable word. That makes sense to me. Let's try insert a string. Tuple. So potentially it's not working for that. So I come to here and I say maybe that. Not
All
that.
right, time's up.
Bug that I had found was that I was first looking at something that was interesting. There was 2 questions that I had for that, that 0 at the end, this for enumerate, and also this condition here. Looking at it, I'm seeing for an insert, I would first want to either sanitize the input, set it to set it somehow. What is this? Current get children tuple object. Yeah. More questions that I have. Testing provided answers.
Hang all of those thoughts in mind. Let me send you the link to the survey.
Yes.
It's actually the same as before.
What I will do is actually, I do have a notepad on my other side. Question on enum for 0 and sanitize input of insert. That's about as far as I got. Survey link was in chat. There it is. Oh, I had to scroll down. There it is.
There it is.
P28. This was condition AI and the try. Mentally demanding. I do not remember what I said the last one was, but I believe I would put this at an 8. This one was more thought-inducing, more questions both on the data structures, intent, I guess, is a word for it, and operation. Again, not very hurried or rushed. I work at that pace usually. I am not working any faster or slower than I would have given a time limit or without time. How successful? I would actually say I was less successful because with the other one, I believe I said an 8, closer to a 13 now. I would have liked to test it more. I believed I got code, but was the code actually mine? No, I was copying from the AI generation. How hard did I have to work to accomplish the level of performance? I believe I put this around a 6 before. I'm putting it at, I'll say middle of the road now. More thought is needed on, again, understanding the intent and design of the data structure. Insecure, discouraged, again, very low. I did not find this frustrating. I actually found it fun. Describe overall approach. Check through the various AI generations of code available to me. Begin picking versions that I liked to start. Then begin work on assembling my version and begin testing. The last part didn't quite get there. I would say a little, not quite somewhat. Liked to get testing done and see the structure in action. but was unable to. Some of the concepts felt still abstract to me as to how the methods, concepts, I feel like that's better, functioned. Quality, I would say good. Definitely not poor, very poor. If I had to choose between acceptable, good, and very good, I found them good. Some of them had different naming conventions. Oh, I probably should write this. Some had different naming conventions of methods for the class. And no, I liked some of the generations more than others, purely for aesthetic reasons. I also felt it was good, but not very good, as the doc strings did not include the param explains. You are here, you're hearing me say this, so if this is needed more context, you can refer to this, me saying this. That the parameters weren't like they weren't defined in the translation, and the return explains. Um, the returns weren't even in the generated doc string. How did the quality match my expectations? Much better. I would say I would. I'm going to say much better because I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting as an AI translation from this. I'm not exactly. I can say my expectations were quite little because I don't really work with AI. Hmm. Code generated by an AI. So my expectation was actually quite low. Translations were useful, a great deal. Had errors. I would say a little. I flipped between somewhat and a little there because I had to think about if there was any errors. It definitely helped me complete the task. Definitely helped me understand the original Java code. Unfortunately, I would say somewhat taught me about Python. Coming back to this original Java code, I did make the decision to sort of start defaulting to the AI code, which is maybe not intended, but I saw that as the easier path as the translation was there. However, I should have defaulted more to the Java code because this is not me understanding the translation. This is generating the data structure from Java into Python. How do you feel provide translations? Made my work difficult versus easy. I would say easier. Slow versus fast. I would say faster than slower because without them, I would have probably been stuck on either the first or second method. The code was generated. I did take it. However, probably would have been better again if I had gone back to the Java a little bit more. Worst versus the best of quality, I would say higher on quality than worst. Most useful was simply a translation existing. It was helpful. It formatted things between Java and Python, which I do know Python better. I think that's actually what I find most useful out of this. Least useful was that that's not the translation's fault though. That's my own fault because I hit a button. I don't know if that came through on the microphone. I started to not look at the Java, which is inherently not what this is supposed to do. We're still, that trust hasn't come yet. I don't know that this code is generated good enough that it did its job, that I cannot look at the Java yet. That's potentially something later. Um,
I actually think that's a very fair thing to say, that like the translation's existence sort of took attention away from the Java code. And now in retrospect, maybe you wish you paid more attention, but you were sort of distracted by the fact that you had the translation.
um, exactly as you had phrased it, that the existence of it took it out
Yeah.
attention away from and thinking back that it would have been better, may have been, for me to work more with the Java than the translation. Yes, were enough. Uh, that was enough. Any more than the 5, and I think I would have gotten stuck in that very first pass that I did to look at them for style or any other characteristics that define them, and I probably would have chewed up more time that way. Additional what additional information is expected? Up front, naming conventions of the methods, style. I think just style of it is what I'm looking for. I didn't actually see. Oh,
Okay, actually, can you say a little bit more what you mean by
yes.
conventions?
I would
Like, oh, sorry.
like to see um, a description of the naming conventions for the methods. Nope, nope. Camel case. Snake case, I believe, is the underscores because it looks like a snake.
Mhm.
If that was even just in a, if that was even just in a comment at the head of the file, it may have been helpful. I'm making the assumption here that that is a parameter that you can put into the generation as to how it would generate, but that if it's not, fair case. The last thing that I had of this was make them more useful to me. You can't quite say why it's importing. That's not a valid. I don't believe that's a valid ask as to give an explanation as to why it's importing a module. Like I looked at the OS module that it imported, and I can not quite understand why it was there, but I'm not sure if that's something that you're able to generate. I think for 22, that's where I'll leave it. Following work conditions. For the following work conditions, to what extent would AI-supported code translation be helpful? Time pressure, I would say very helpful, but potentially a hindrance. Extremely when working alone. Comparison, like if I had a first draft that I had and then did the code from the AI, it could help me see like, was my thinking here on path compared to what was expected, something like that. Normal working conditions, I would still say very helpful because I found it, I'd say moderate. Again, trailing back to that thought that I had about seeing it as a semi-crutch. I started not looking at it. Only I would use, I'd say very helpful. Knowing me, I would find it useful. I would probably start using it, test it more, and then find ways to change it because I also like tinkering. I do like writing. Preferably, I do like writing code. Working on code that my team members or other people would use. I actually think that it would be more helpful for them because sometimes my naming convention for variables and methods is not great. Working in a small team, I would still say helpful here, but less in a larger team. I do think with a smaller team, it can become helpful because you can still inject your own style and things, but with a larger team, I think it's more important to have your own code style. It's what distinguishes you for your development and things like that. If you're sharing across the largest code team, I think it's more important to have your own like flavor for your code.
Mhm.
Experimenting or prototype code. I would actually find this extremely for experimenting up front, but again, on the basis that I had for working alone again. I'll still tinker with it and play with it, but as I see it, it's like if I'm working in JavaScript and I say, how do I use this function in jQuery or something like that? I look up examples. This could be akin to an example saying, this is how this works. Production code, I'd say moderate for sort of the conditions that I've set above, but this is assuming that the AI-supported code translation is not the be-all, end-all. You're not doing what I did and just copying and pasting. You're still writing your code. I don't think we've hit the point that AIs can write production code yet. For which situations be appropriate when the code is used for mission critical? And no, probably no. Code's correctness is important. Correctness, can I ask for an elaboration on correctness, as in like style syntactical correctness or functional correctness?
Oh, functional correctness.
Okay, when the code's functional correctness, I would say slightly more appropriate than mission critical applications. Oh, poo, did I break this? Okay, there we go. If you highlight a word and then you click on the form, that was weird. Correctness, as because I do have an idea that this may work, it is slightly appropriate as a first draft. That's what I would see.
Mhm.
Runtime performance is important. Part of me, I would actually still say moderately appropriate for this, simply because, cancel. I wiped off a portion of my keyboard and I hit F7. No. Um, but performance is sort of finicky in the sense that, as I've said before, developers have their own flavors. That also comes with habits and things like that. If I'm of the mind that I like this data structure and I like using this data structure, I've used it a lot, but it's not the best data structure for this function, and there are better ones, it makes more sense for something else to come in and say, I thought it was this. You should use this, because if it's just me working on it, I'm not going to look for another one. I'm going to do what I know how to do.
Mhm.
I'd say appropriate for translation of a large code base, because I'm assuming the runtime of the translation is much faster than a human having to copy and paste or type and translate things like that. I'd still say moderate appropriate for unfamiliar language. If it was me, I would still prefer to start looking at not habits, but mannerisms of the language that I'm writing in. More code examples, things like that. Potentially, again, this could be an example. When the code is translated to a language, I would actually find this not appropriate for translation into a language that I don't know, because what I just said to the previous one. I like looking at it, and I think that I would learn more as I become familiar, even if it is just examples and showing, this data structure does this. I'd still like to know why. How useful would each of these kinds of how useful would each of these kinds of AI models be for real code translation work? I would say that if you have to make a fix every one line, no. But I feel like, not to say this is a linear progression, but my first response is a model that requires you to fix one problem per 100K lines. That's very useful for me if that means it's a good system. I would even say 10K is still very extremely useful. Problem would be a fault in the code. I wouldn't call style choice of the interpreter a problem. That's just for me. I would even say 1 per 100. I've written projects that are still 600 lines of code and found it to be, if I had 6 bugs in 600 lines of code for a tiny project, I'd be kind of happy about that. Especially if it was like a first draft that I did. Like, if you sit down your computer, like I did with the non-AI, I didn't even count how many lines that was. If I ran that and I found, say 300 lines, probably not. But if it was 300 lines and I found 3 bugs on my first pass, I'd be dang proud of that. I'd be expecting somewhere close to 30, especially if it's, my first iteration again. For 10, I think that would be a steep cut,
Mhm.
that value, that factor of 10. But definitely like 1 per 100, I would still be happy with that. Um, with the AI task, again, to repeat, docs, string translation. Um, could I, Docstring translation could use some more work to bring in the portions. Pardon me. The source docstring format, i.e., at param, at return, etc., things like that. I'm not sure how common that is outside of Java. I think JavaScript also supports highlighting during doc strings to show what the parameters and returns are. I have a vague idea that Python should, but I would definitely find it very useful for translation on that, even if it's just like a regex for at param at return. But again, I know that's in Java, but how ubiquitous is it?
Mhm. All right. Yay. So one more survey, but this one's much quicker. So this is the link.
With versus without. The main difference between the two that I found was I'm a little bit biased here because for the try versus the priority queue, the priority queue I found it more simple is the wrong word, but it's a
Mhm.
word that I can use for it. It was less mentally challenging for like functionality, things like that.
Mhm.
If I'm working solely on AI support versus without, the main difference that I found between the two was that I referring to the AI generated code significantly more than the source code when it was available.
When you say source code, you mean the Java?
Yes.
Okay.
Source Java. I'll include that for better purposes.
Thank you.
I as I'm looking at this, I see the translation as it's a I'm not going to call it a compiler because it does way more than that. It's a parser syntactic well, kind of a compiler. Parser, syntactic analyzer, and recompiler to the target language, but as I as I'm saying this, source being the original document and target being the final document, something like that. I haven't taken a compilers course in 3 years, but I'm not excited to take one again, but still, it's cool. What other AI support would I desire for working with code? Um, if I was gonna say like naming suggestions, that's not quite what I'm looking for because, as I've said previously, I do often have some strange names for variables, function, methods, things like that. What other AI support would I even think of? I would see code translation. Um, I know that's not really AI. Testing your code, that's not quite AI unless you're having the AI write test cases, but I don't really find that. I don't know if that
What
I'm
would,
going to write that in as a pie in the sky.
yeah, if you think that would be helpful, then.
Uh, not generating. I think that would be neat, but I don't know. I mean, you'd have to look at the test cases that it does generate. I wouldn't blind trust.
Mhm.
My default is to say not blind trust anything AI generated, usually. Um, but honestly, like that's a super nice like long-term goal eventually. Next, dupe. Um, more software engineer than data scientist. I'm not even a data scientist. I'm a data engineer. I'm in the program for that. Have I used learning algorithms? No, not as part of my main work. Code translation tasks. Actually, yes, within the last month because I've had to work. Um, I set up a Python web application using Flask and had to translate. It's not really translation, but I'm still going to write it. Had to translate Python code and variables into JS. Like Python does this weird thing where it's if you try and view a Python string in JavaScript, like if you just assign it to a JavaScript variable, any special characters or spaces become the HTML encoding of that string, which was a major problem. Also, Python only uses like single quotes. So if you're trying to change a Python JSON to a JavaScript JSON, you have to first swap out all of the single quotes for double quotes. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it just hates it. Um, and yes, I think I would. Uh, that's my own tiny little gripe about translating from Python to JavaScript.
All right. Congratulations, you're finished. Um,
Uh,
Yay. So let me tell you a little bit more about what we're doing. So there's a lot of research. Um, sorry.
Sorry, I just realized that I totally closed down that I meant to leave open the
Which
there
one?
we go. I meant to leave open the you can go ahead. Sorry. I was reopening the code so I could look at it again to try and understand that zero index.
Oh, okay. Um, Actually, you know what? If you can just give me a second, I wanna copy your code off just to make sure
I
I
will
get
not
it.
change it. I am still hands off.
Yeah. If my own terminal window opens eventually, maybe. There we go. So let me try multitasking here. So there's a lot of AI and machine learning research that's happening in the space of code. So you may have heard about AI for code or heard that phrase. Okay, not so much. That's okay. Let me see.
I could say a majority of the code that I work with on a daily basis is mainframe JCL.
Mhm. JCL, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Oh yeah,
All right. Just give me 2 seconds.
not a problem. I'm going to take this time to figure out what my team was slacking me about.
Oops. Okay, good. I've got it. All right. So yeah, so there's a lot of AI machine learning research doing things with code, and some of these are, like you saw in this study, translating from one language to another. There's also models out there that do things like generate documentation for code. So like you select some code, it produces um, sort of like your desires for a docstring, but more about trying to describe what the code is doing.
Mm.
And then there's other models that do things like natural language to code. So, you can, sort of like what you would type into Stack Overflow to figure out, how do I don't know, instantiate an array in Java or something. It would be
Yeah,
able to take that and actually give you the code to do it.
what's the thing needed? It's like the joke about Python is that you write a sentence, and if it's Python, it just might work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's kind of happening in the machine learning community that they're building models to do these tasks. But there hasn't really been much work to understand, like, are these models actually useful for software engineers doing actual programming tasks? So that's what we're trying to understand in this study is, for at least this one use case of translating code from one language to another, what we observe is the models are doing super cool things, like it can translate Java to Python, but we see that there's problems, right? We see that there's bugs, there's things that get in there that you don't understand, like the whole thing with the OS import and why is it doing OS path join? Like this doesn't make sense to me. We're trying to understand, like, is this still useful for people to have a model that, maybe it does 50% of the work or 80% of the work or something like that, at various levels of quality, is it still useful to help you accomplish this translation task faster or better or something like that? So that's kind of why we're contrasting, looking at how you do the task without the AI versus with the AI and trying to see like, did you accomplish more because you had the AI, or did you see these things in the AI's code and you just like got so hung up on it that you spend all your time just trying to understand what the heck the AI did and actually like detracted from your ability to do the task.
I can admit
So
for that second point, that is both it's partially a mannerism of myself that I look at it and I'm like,
yeah,
why?
and that's another interesting thing that we're seeing is, sometimes when people do this task, not often, but sometimes you can just like turn your brain off and just kind of do it, right? Like I can give you, the queue code in Java, and you can just turn your brain off and just do like a straight translation to Python. But a lot of the times, like we see people really want to understand what the code is doing and how it works. And sometimes having that AI code, it actually does help, right? Because you see, in this case, we give you multiple alternates, and I saw you're like comparing between, um, different pairs of these things to see, oh, this is how it did it in one. Did it do it the same way in the other? Oh, all five of them do it the same way. Therefore, that gives me more confidence that this was actually the correct way that it was translated. And that's a little bit of an artifact of how this model works, is it's probabilistic in nature. So what it's trying to do is like, given the current token, or given the whole history of tokens up to this point, it's trying to predict what the next one is when it does this translation. And so if you're predicting the most probable token, okay, you can do that, but you can also look at tokens that are a little bit less probable and then try and follow them on down the line, so that you can ultimately, what you end up with is multiple translations of the same source, but there have like little differences amongst each other, kind of like what you saw, that some of the naming conventions of variables were a little different, or one of them got stuck on that import OS and do this OS path join kind of thing, whereas the others didn't. um, and if you look at how the machine learning folks would evaluate these kinds of systems, they'll do something like produce 20 or 25 translation alternatives. And as long as one of them like works and passes, maybe a set of unit tests that they've written, they'll claim victory. And they'll say, oh yeah, the translation, it produced the correct translation, in the top
You have a
25. And then we look at that from a human standpoint. We're like, nobody is going to be able to look at 25 translations to find the one that works, in
so yeah,
absolute
it's
unit
either
tests.
you have to run all 25 through a unit test, or
Exactly. Exactly.
that pass rate's not quite where I would want it to be. It's not
Yeah.
1 in 100, but still.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing in this study. Um any questions about any of this, or
I did put in my ID for continuing for more information later. So you said it was applicable for translation from source to target language, given code existence there. What are some of the other applications been so far? Again,
so this model that we're playing with, the model is actually called transcoder. This one, it kind of does two things. So one of them is it does the task of translating code. It's actually between three languages: Java, Python, and C++. It was trained. I don't know how much you know about machine learning algorithms, but it was trained in an unsupervised manner. So they
hmm
just kind of threw a whole bunch of code from all three languages at it, and there's sort of a feature, or because of the fact that C++, Java, and Python, they have a lot of lexical overlap, like some of the keywords are shared between these languages.
yeah,
Yeah. The training process was able to figure that out, and kind of it was able to cluster similar keywords across the languages. So if you use the word class, right? Class is the same in all three languages. And so it was sort of able to learn that. And in the way that it learns that, then it's able to learn this, how do I translate, class whatever from one language to another. This kind of model, the way it was trained, it wouldn't work so well if you like if you try to throw COBOL in the mix, um, there's a lot of interest inside of IBM research to do things with COBOL, but because it doesn't have those same lexical similarities, I don't know if you've ever looked at COBOL, but it's very different. Um,
Happily, my programming from school. I'm only about 2 years out of school right now.
okay.
Um, HTML to JavaScript to Java to Python,
Mhm.
and then loop.
All right.
That was
That's fine. That's fine. Um, so anyway, so like I said, the first thing that it's doing is it's learning how to, you know, translate between these languages, but the way that it's doing it is because it's learning this underlying representation of these like tokens that exist in code, really these strings that exist in code. And
hmm
so you can do some other stuff once you have that representation. You can do things like find code that's similar to a piece of code that you're working with. So if you imagine, there's
like
oh,
for loops, while loops.
well, I'm going to pick on something specific like bubble sort, right, or insertion sort. The core of the algorithm is the same, but there are a lot of maybe details in terms of like what are you naming your variables, or what are your looping constraints or something. Like there's a little bit of play. But because we have these underlying representations of code, you can do things like inside of a large corpus, find me everything that looks like a bubble sort. And so you're able to find like similar code, sort of like a code search engine, where if you're working on maybe a piece of an algorithm, or maybe you're working on an algorithm, but you don't think you have all the details correct. Um, with this underlying representation that the model has learned, you can find other things in a bigger corpus of code that are similar to what you're interested in. So something like that, you could think of like a much better version of Stack Overflow, where you put in here's the code I'm working on, and you can find like here's 50 examples of other people that have written very similar code, and maybe that actually helps you.
I believe it's the internet. Everything's on the internet. Everything's big. I have a vague feeling, I'd say like 10 to 20 to 30% confidence that I've seen something akin to that before. You feed it some amount of code and it does a code search on either like Stack Overflow, GitHub, something, public code repos to say, these people have done something similar,
Mhm. Oh
do
yeah,
something.
there's many ways of doing this, right? And I mean, even today, right, is you write some sort of natural language description on Stack Overflow, and more often than not, you find the code that does the thing, right? Um, the generative models, they're a little bit special in how they've learned these underlying representations of code. Um, Personally, I think it's still a little early days on everything that we're able to do with these kinds of representations. Um, for a place like IBM, I think we do care a lot about the translation use case, because we do have a fairly substantial business around this thing called application modernization, which you can think of as take all those legacy COBOL systems that were written 100 years ago by people who are no longer with the company, and which have no documentation. How do we take all that source code, make sense of it, and translate it into a modern language? This is sort of where that question came around with translating millions of lines of code, because those code bases are that big.
Yeah.
And we've spoken to people whose job it is to sort of poke around and figure out what's going on there and bring it into a modern language. So yeah. Any other questions about any of this? Or I guess you did sign up for future studies. At some point, the other thing my team has been doing is we've been building tooling around VS Code to make it easy to use these kind of models on your own code. There will be something that we're releasing at some point. I have to wave my hands a little because I don't know exactly when it's all going to be ready. But whenever it is, we'll notify you because you put your email in there. Um, and I guess let me just say thank you again. I am going to send you some blue points, as a thank you for your participation. I also realize that spending 2 hours on a research study is, well, it can be a substantial time investment. So I really appreciate it. So I'll send some blue points your way. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other questions that come to mind, feel free to shoot me an email. But other than that, thank you very much. I hope you had fun. Hope you learned something.
I learned I know a little bit more about a priority queue than I thought.
Excellent. All righty.
All right.
And hey, we're under the 2 hours. Excellent.
Alrighty.
All right. Thank you so much, Danny. Take care.